Hey y'all, welcome back. Today I'm kicking off episode 2 of my horror manga taste test series, which I guess officially makes it a series with episode 2. But I started this back in February. I did an episode where I read, I think, 3 different series and just was giving them a try because previously I had only read Junji Ito and really wanted to branch out into more horror manga. I've really been in a horror mood this year, so it just seemed like a good time to do that, and I had a great time with it in February, so I thought spooky season was going to be the perfect time to bring it back and do another episode, try a few more series, especially because I still had some outstanding recommendations that I had not gotten a chance to read yet. So that's what we're doing, and I've got 4 series to try. I will also link the previous episode up in the cards above in case you want to check that one out as well. I read Killing Stalking, Phantom Tales of the Night, and Shibata in that episode. So if you want to see my thoughts on any of those, that'll be in the cards above at some point during the bit that I'm saying this. But I have 4 series to try this time around. 2 of them were recommended to me by Di from Dice's 19 Hearts. She gave me a really long list of recommendations. I think several years ago I had requested them in a video and she left a really great comment with a bunch of recommendations. So massive thank you to Di. This is wonderful, and I finally am kind of circling back around and reading a couple more of her recommendations. So I'm excited to get to both of those. I also have one that I just kind of found browsing around. I haven't heard anyone talk about it, so I'm interested to see how I feel about it, just knowing nothing going in. And then the last one is one that I've seen becoming kind of popular recently. I know most recently Gabby Reed's read it, and so I'll bring that back up when I discuss it. But yeah, so we have those kind of sources for all of my recommendations. So I guess we'll talk first about the 2 that Di recommended to me, and these were Corpse Party Volume 1, which I think is about a series of students, or like a class of students, who end up, it just says swept up into a living nightmare. I think I've heard a little bit about this series, and there's something about like getting transported to school building like in the past or something that was like the location of a bunch of murders. I really don't know. This doesn't really tell me a whole lot about it. Sounded interesting though, so we're gonna give that a try. Second, I have another by Yukito Ayatsuji, which is about a guy who like transfers into a new middle school class and then discovers that things are very weird and dark and sinister in this class. So these 2 are both kind of set in schools, which I'm really interested in because I don't think I've read much horror that takes place in a school, so I'm curious to see how both of these are going to use that setting. Then the one I've seen a couple of times, Gabby Reed's read this recently, PTSD Radio Volume 1. This is one I don't know much about other than the fact that the cover makes me kind of nauseous, if I'm being honest. It's a really creepy cover. I have been keeping it sandwiched between the other books, but this one I believe is about some sort of like eldritch entity that's something to do with hair, and it says something about before it's too late, tune into PTSD Radio. No clue what to expect here. Again, Gabby Reed's read this recently, and I really genuinely at this point don't remember what her opinion on this series was. I haven't like sought out other reviews just because I want to give myself a chance to read it without having kind of preconceived notions about it. But I did see later on that the author has stopped writing this, and supposedly, depending on which source you look at, it may or may not be due to the fact that the author was experiencing creepy paranormal happenings while writing it? Question mark. I didn't find any like credible sources on that, but that's what I have heard. And I've also heard that people can't think about hair in the same way after they've read this. Also, I've developed hiccups in the middle of a sentence, so bear with me, please. Anyway, interested to give this a try. I am a little worried that this may react poorly with my personal brain gremlins and variety of anxiety that I have. So this is one I'm going to try and read on a day when I'm in like a good frame of mind and kind of prepared for something like this. This is the one I suspect has the greatest likelihood for me not enjoying it for that reason, but I want to proceed with caution, give it a try anyway, and I will set it down if I need to do that for my own kind of like sanity and well-being. But I do want to give this a try just because I've heard about it several times and it seems like it's probably really weird. And then the last one I picked up is actually a webtoon that's been collated into a physical edition. This is I'm the Grim Reaper by Graveweaver, which for some reason is a title that doesn't stick in my brain, but this is following a woman who dies and ends up in hell, and she doesn't really remember how she died or what was going on around her death that led to this situation, but she's offered an opportunity to become a Grim Reaper and return to the mortal plane and kind of figure out what happened, but as the Grim Reaper, she's required every day to bring back the soul of another sinner for Satan. That is her job. That is what she has to do. The back says it's a hell of a job. So that's what she's doing. And then when she's on the mortal plane, she encounters a detective who is working on a case that seems like it might be connected to her past. And so she tries to like team up with him to figure out what happened while also preventing him from realizing that she is a Grim Reaper. So really curious to see where this is going to go, just because I love a good mystery. I like a kind of mystery-based horror, and I think this is one that could really appeal to me, but I also just don't know what to expect because this is the one that I haven't heard anybody talking about, so really could go either way. But those are all the series I'm going to start here. I'm not sure which one I'm going to start with first. Hold up the stack so you can actually see them. I don't know which one of these I'm going to start with first, but you'll find out momentarily when I come back with my thoughts on one of them. Before we get to the manga, we have to have a little Elwood break because he has taken my seat and he is very comfy. He's also seasonally appropriate. My little void cat friend. Okay, I decided to start with I'm the Grim Reaper since it was the one I knew the least about. And I have to say that I feel like this is okay. It was a fun little read, but I don't think it's fantastic. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue with the series, and I'm hoping that this video is going to move upwards from here. It's not bad by any means. I think the art is really interesting. We have a lot of these like really interesting backgrounds. I'm trying to find one. There's one at the beginning that I really liked. We will have these like really intricately rendered backgrounds, like this one with the statue, and then the characters have that more webtoon-like quality to them. They're a little flatter, so it's interesting. You have these almost like 2D characters in a 3D world, and then you'll have these pages that are a little more kind of chibi-like characters. And yeah, it's interesting art style. I think that like it's fun to look at. There's a lot of like motion in it, in the like the way the characters are moving. I think that that's conveyed really well, and there's some really interesting like scenes in here. I also like the general tone of it. Like it's not really, I wouldn't really call it horror actually that much. It's more mystery focused. There's a horror element, there's a lot of like murder, but it's not really depicted on page that much. Like the things that are happening aren't put in front of your eyes. So it's there, but it's not like in your face. And it's much more interested in like the mystery of it because we're trying to find out what happened to the main character Scarlet prior to her death and like what led her to becoming a sinner who is, according to the devil at the start of the book, destined for like the 9th circle of hell because she is such a horrible person in life, and so she's like desperate to find out what she did and what happened. How did she end up in this situation? Because now her options are basically be in the 9th circle or be a Grim Reaper for the devil and kill a sinner every day. And so like the situation she's in is interesting, the mystery itself is interesting, but I don't think that this is plotted in a way that works for me. I think a lot of people will really like this. It's got this kind of silly, irreverent tone alongside that mystery that I think makes it like very fun and entertaining to read. However, it doesn't entirely work for me because I feel like we're jumping between things with no sense of logic. And there's some really dark moments and really like interesting conversations about like morality that just kind of will happen, and then like suddenly we're jumping to something else and it doesn't really make any sense. Like we'll have this like really dark moment where she's having an intense conversation about like morality with the detective Chase, and then all of a sudden he's like, so anyway, do you like video games? And we get this like cutesy jokey scene of them playing video games, and it's there's no connection between those things. There's not like a natural progression of their conversations. There's also not really any kind of natural progression with their relationship. Like he bumps into her at the start and then comes back later and is like trying to arrest her or something, and that's how they meet. And then like the way that he treats her, the way that he interacts with her just doesn't make any sense because he has no reason to trust her and actually has very good reasons to be suspicious of her. But he immediately is like, yeah, sure, you can stay at my house. Here, carry my gun for me. Like, there's a lot of weird stuff happening with their relationship that just doesn't make any sense. Also, this is supposed to be in some sort of like dystopian world, I think, but it's not clear until like pretty late in the first volume. It just randomly is like, so anyway, we don't have a government like the continent in the south. The power is in the hands of the people, which means that everything is very corrupt, and it's like kind of a conversation about capitalistic democracy, but it's just like very surface level. It doesn't really dig into it, and then it jumps to something lighter and fluffier pretty much immediately, or jumps to like a completely different topic. And yeah, it's just, I think it's inconsistent is my problem, and some of the leaps of logic are just a little bit too far for me. It just doesn't work for me personally. I don't know if I might read volume 2 just to see where the plot goes from here, because we're really just digging into the mystery by the end of the volume. But overall, I think it was fine. I think if you like kind of urban fantasy stuff and you like a dark story, you might want to check this out, because I think it is a fun story to read. It just doesn't totally work for me personally. I got some exciting and thematically relevant book mail today, because I just got Uncanny by Junji Ito. I requested an arc of this, it was rejected, and it was so sad, but also I immediately went out and pre-ordered this. This is like a memoir, but also a like examination of his own work and kind of thinking through, why do people like horror manga? Why do we lean towards things that are frightening? And I'm really excited to read this. It's really interesting too, because like the pages are actually blue. And I don't know why I thought that Junji Ito's memoir was not going to have illustrations, like it was going to be a normal book, because it absolutely has illustrations, and actually like every page has this blue frame that has little drawings in the corners and things. So like, I'm really excited to read this. I probably will not get to read it for this video, just because I have given myself some short turnaround time, but I am definitely going to try and fit this in for spooky season. Also, there's the back. I haven't read, I think this is from Tomie maybe, and I haven't read that one yet. It's either Tomie or it might be the character from Uzumaki, but haven't read Tomie yet. It's on my list. But yeah, I'm very excited to read this. I also got, though, my Hello Stream t-shirt, so it was very like horror filled mail today since I got my book. And then this is for Outside Xbox and Outside Extra have their Hello Stream event every year. They stream horror games, so the music is going all music-y. I had to get the t-shirt because that has entered my like daily vocabulary, so I was very excited to get the t-shirt as well. So it was just like perfect timing. It all arrived together. Now, besides the mail, I do have the update that I've backed myself into a corner because I need to finish all of these books today, because this video needs to get edited, that's the word I want. This video needs to get edited and uploaded for Saturday. It's currently Thursday, but tomorrow is the start of a readathon I'm participating in. So we've got to get through all of these today. I'm gonna be logging off my work computer like very shortly. I'm taking a little break because I was in a 30-minute meeting that turned into a almost 2-hour meeting. So we're taking a little break, but yes, I'm gonna be reading all of these. I have decided to go with PTSD Radio next because I am in a fairly good like frame of mind at the moment. So I feel like this is gonna be the best moment for me to pick this one up and try to enjoy it. So this is where we're headed next, but hopefully I'll be done with all 3 of these this evening. And yeah, I'm excited. I think it's gonna be fun, even if it's like intimidating stack to get through in one day. I think it's gonna be a really fun evening. So I'm gonna go tackle this one and I'll come back with my thoughts and we'll see where I'm gonna go from there. I'm not really sure what order I'm gonna tackle these in beyond that. Alright, well, I've just finished PTSD Radio Volume 1. This is the omnibus edition, so it's technically volumes 1 and 2. But this was an interesting experience. It's very weird. It's a series of like very short vignettes that kind of hop back and forth across time, and they're all kind of centered on some sort of entity that is pulling people's hair or shows up as like a creature made of hair and filled with other body parts, or at various points like there's arms that look like shadows but are maybe also hair. So it's all like centered around hair. The entity has something to do with hair. There's this kind of recurring theme of people shaving their head, or in some cases, like when someone has passed away, putting a lock of hair in a box and offering it to a god that they're worshipping, who seems to be either the entity itself or related to that entity. And it's just like very weird. I think I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars because it's, I think, very confusing, but the art is really, really good and really creepy. So yeah, I really enjoyed like the artwork and the actual like reading of it. I just found it a little bit confusing because part of it is that there's not names for most of the characters, and some of the characters look very similar. But I really enjoyed the ways that the vignettes would like start to come together. Like, I feel like I'm putting puzzle pieces together. Like, I'm seeing little bits and pieces of a story coalescing across the various vignettes that are in here. And they are like very, very short. They're like a few pages a piece. You can kind of like, there's all these like black pages that are the kind of dividers. And so each vignette is somewhere between like 2 and 10 pages at max. So you're getting these like very, very short little pieces of story at a time. And so yeah, it was very confusing. I did start to piece together partway through that some of the characters are in fact the same character but at different points in their life, and kind of interacting with or being haunted by this entity at various points in their life, or having those things kind of like recur, having similar events happen to them over time. So yeah, it was interesting seeing all of those different pieces come together and the story kind of emerge out of these little bits and pieces. I feel like I really only understand a fragment of what was happening here, and I think I probably will go on and read at least one more volume of this, just because I'm curious to see like where it's going to go from here, and if it's going to become clearer over time, like if I'm gonna get more pieces of the puzzle, or if it's just going to keep introducing new things. So yeah, kind of curious to see where it's gonna go, and overall was an interesting experience. I think I might go to, sorry, I got a pile over here I gotta kind of adjust. I think I might go to Corpse Pile, because I said pile a second ago, Corpse Party next, and honestly, this spot you see me in here, probably where I'm gonna be the rest of the evening reading these. I have a little buddy even, it's wonderful. But I think I'm gonna go with Corpse Party next, in part because this is the next shortest, because the last thing I have is 700 pages. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go here next, just because I'm really curious what this story is gonna be about, and I think I want to kind of cap things off with the full story. So that's the plan. I am gonna take a break and eat some dinner in a little bit, but yeah. So far so good, and actually timing wise we're not doing too badly. It's 6:30 and I had to take a break to help with some dinner prep earlier. My mom was running to the store to pick up a few ingredients we needed, so I did some of the chopping that needed to be done ahead of time. So even with a little bit of a break in there, it's only 6:30 and I logged off work sometime a little after 5, so not bad at all. I feel like this is very doable, and I'm gonna go ahead and dive into the next thing so that we can keep this momentum going. Hey buddy. I've just finished Corpse Party, which I didn't realize is also a bind-up. It's the 2 first volumes. It's blood-covered edition or something. Before I can talk about it, I actually can't hold it up. We do have to acknowledge the little man. He's so comfy. I got this like hobby lap pillow thing, and he loves it. He loves to snuggle in like this and just sleep. So he's very comfy. I don't know if you're gonna be able to hear his little noises, but he's purring and he keeps doing his little happy sighs. There he is. He's a little friend. Anyway, I have finished Corpse Party, volumes 1 and 2 technically, and I'm a little torn on what to rate it. I think it's going to be a 3.5 or a 4. I did have a good time reading it. I do have some major issues with it, but I think it's doing something interesting with its horror. So this one is following this group of students who are like staying late after school one day. There's been like a festival at the school, and the group of them are cleaning up after their particular activity for the cultural festival. Is they'd made like a red bean soup shop kind of a thing, and they're cleaning up after that. And so they're staying late along with the assistant teacher from their class, and one of them is about to move schools, so the group of them do a ritual that one of them saw in like a ghost story. The book opens with them telling ghost stories, and one of them has found this ritual as a part of a ghost story that she thinks sounds like really sweet. It's about like always being able to find your way back to each other, basically. And they do the ritual and get transported to this old school building that used to be in the place where their current school sits. So they're from Kisaragi Academy, and there's Tinjin Elementary School that used to be there but was bulldozed and then built over top of. So they end up in the old school somehow, and various creepy things are happening to them. They kind of get split up into smaller groups, and various horrific things are happening to them. I did think this was pretty interesting. It's a very slow build for the first 2/3, and then it gets like very intense and we start seeing some deaths and things in the last third pretty like quickly back to back. But I thought it was doing some interesting things with its horror, because the things that are happening to the individual people are in each case kind of a commentary on something in their lives. Like we have one character who is, and I'll just give this one example because I don't think it's spoilers in the way the other one is, but we have one character who is like constantly happy-go-lucky, and their death is used to kind of comment on like grief and depression and the way that you can never really know how well someone is doing, that people who are very deeply depressed can seem like the happiest people you know, and the kind of that like silent struggle with depression. So I thought that that was really interesting. I think it's using those horror moments to kind of bring up interesting topics and important topics. So I'm enjoying like that element of it. I do feel like it was a lot of build to then have a kind of a rushed ending for the 2 volumes. The second volume is much more intense than the first one, I will say that. So I felt like it was a little bit rushed in the latter part, and it may just more be an effect for me of reading it back to back and not realizing until I was partway through that it was like a collection of 2 volumes. So I think it may also be just that like the first volume is kind of establishing things. I also don't love that like for all of the characters, they basically just get told what's going on. There's not really a mystery of like, what is the school, how did they get here, anything like that. We're just told straight out multiple times what's going on. Like the different groups are being told by various entities that they encounter what is happening in this weird creepy old school. So there's not really like a mystery for them to solve other than like, how do we get out of here? So I think that that would have been a little bit stronger if it had been a mystery. There's that. And then I think the last thing that really bugged me is that there is a queer character who I really like them in a lot of respects, but of course they are the first to die without ever having a chance to tell the object of their affections that they have feelings for them, or rather the subject of their affections. And that character is also portrayed in a way that I don't think they're intending to be negative, but the character is portrayed in a lot of ways as boundary crossing, in the sense that they don't respect other characters' boundaries. They're paired up with a character they have feelings for, and they're constantly like groping the other character and telling the other character that they're so attractive, and it's really uncomfortable because it like is used to suggest that she's kind of odd, and that this character is kind of outside of the bounds of normalcy, and I just found it really uncomfortable and gross the way that that was being portrayed. That it was like they couldn't respect the boundaries of other characters. They're repeatedly being told, hey, don't do that, and repeatedly groping other characters. It just was really uncomfortable, and I think based on some of the other things that happen with that character and the other moments that we get of that character, I don't think it was intentional to be negative, but I think it is reinforcing some kind of very negative ideas about queer people. So I did find that like very uncomfortable to read at moments. It's not like constant or anything, but it happens a few times. Elwood is leaving. He's heard Mom downstairs doing something in the kitchen. He's like, well, now I need to go see what's going on down there. So I can finally kind of hold up the book. So yeah, we do follow these two characters for most of this whole collection, and then jump to one of the other groups kind of near the end of the second volume. So I am curious to see how things play out. I probably will continue with the series because I do want to know what's going to happen to the other characters. I'm curious to see about if they're actually going to make it out of the situation or not. And I am curious to see how, like, the other horror elements will play out and what kind of conversations those will be bringing up. So yeah, overall, I feel like this was a pretty good time in terms of horror. Oh, the other thing I want to mention real quick is if there's a lot of sexualization of these characters. They're frequently drawn in, like, kind of sexualized positions, and it's clear that that's the intent. So I will say that that is also pretty uncomfortable because these are teenagers. I was thinking they were supposed to be middle schoolers, they're not. They're high schoolers. I think they're supposed to be like junior year high schoolers. So they're older than I originally thought, like 16, 17, but still, it's very uncomfortable in a few spots. It's not, again, it's not constant, but there's just a few panels where I'm like, that is a choice that you made. But yeah, so overall, I think I will continue with this series, and yeah, I'm curious to see what other things are going to happen, because at the moment, like I said, there's not a whole lot of, like, mystery solving. It's just kind of like them wandering through this creepy old school and experiencing things, so it's kind of interesting. So now, we are down to the last one of the evening, and it is not much later because I had to help with dinner earlier and ate dinner, and it is currently almost 10 o'clock. So I'm not sure I'm actually going to make it through all of this chunky fella this evening, but I'm going to make a good effort to get through as much of it as I can, and if I have to finish a small chunk of this tomorrow before I start my readathon books, that'll be okay. At the very least, I've gotten through, you know, these two, and then the one other one I read the other day. So I've gotten through 3/4 of the books for this video so far, and I feel like it's okay if I have a little chunk of this to read. Good morning. I'm just popping in for a second to say that I did not manage to start another yesterday, so I will be reading this today. That said, I did read the first couple of pages just this morning. There's like a little section right before you get to the actual, like, intro that gives you kind of a rundown of what the story is going to be about, and I'm really intrigued to see where this is going to go, actually. So in those, like, couple of pages, it's just like 3 or 4 pages, there's these two people talking about something that happened like 26 years prior to their conversation, and it's that there was this class of students that had a really popular kid in it named Misaki, who everybody loved Misaki. But then Misaki was in a horrific accident and died, and the students were so, like, heartbroken and, like, upset because so many of them had been friends with Misaki. But then one of the students spoke up and said, well, Misaki is here, can't you see they're right there? And all of the students spent the rest of the year pretending that Misaki was there. They would talk at Misaki's desk and walk home together and do all these things, and so all the students kept pretending as though Misaki was still alive, except then they reached graduation, and there is a photo of the whole class during graduation, and Misaki is in the photo despite having died sometime prior. So that sounds really interesting. I'm really curious to see where this is going to go, and I'm feeling more hopeful that I'm going to enjoy this because that is just a really intriguing premise. I have no idea what to expect from this story, but I'm curious to know how that whole situation is going to play out. So yeah, so far so good. But I will be reading this today and then editing this video this evening so that it can go up tomorrow. Fingers crossed I manage it, and then I'll start my readathon books later this evening when I'm done with all of that. So yeah, for now though, I've got to go get started on work. It is work time first thing in the morning. It's like 8:20, so I'm starting my day, and I'm hopeful that it'll be a productive day. It's been kind of a rough week, if I'm honest, but we're gonna see where things go. I'm gonna get as much done as I can, and then this evening, we're gonna dive back into another, and then wrap this thing up. So I got a much later start on this evening than I intended to. I did have to go on a bit of a shopping trip. I have a wedding to go to next weekend and was looking for something to wear. Did not succeed. I got some other things though to add to my rotation. Mostly what I own are a million of these same plain color ribbed shirts. So I got a couple of things. So it was, you know, partially successful shopping trip, but I had to do that, and then my mom and I came home and watched Great British Bake Off for 2 hours. So finally got to start on this pretty late in the evening, but I have made it to the halfway point, and we're gonna do our best to get through this evening and get this video up, and then tomorrow morning I've got to get up early and go dress shopping again for this wedding. But for now, I am halfway through this, and it's really weird so far. I think I'm at a point where things are starting to make more sense. We're starting to get some answers kind of here at the halfway point of what the fuck is going on here. I don't know where this is going to go from here. I feel like, given the information I've just found in this little, like, last maybe couple of chapters, I feel like this is a lot of book to have left based on that. But I also feel like this was a lot of book to have for the amount of information we got. I think what I'm finding is that this is a little bit repetitive. It keeps having these same kind of moments over and over again. We're following this character named Koichi, who joins a new class at this middle school. He's in his last year of middle school, and things are very weird as soon as he joins the class. The other students are behaving strangely. There's specific things that they won't talk about, and in particular there is a girl in the class that he keeps talking to, but then other characters freak out when he mentions her, and they like behave as though she's not there. So he's not really sure if he's like going crazy, if she really exists, if she doesn't exist, or what's going on. And there's also talk of a story that happened. I just realized I'm holding this upside down. There's also talk of a story of something that happened 26 years before this that is significant in some way, but again, characters won't talk about it. So the entire first half of this is mostly Koichi going to various people and trying to ask them questions about things, and either people in the class acting really weird and avoiding him, or him starting to like notice this girl and run off to talk to her, or him talking to people outside of the class who know something and are unwilling to speak about it, or don't quite remember it enough to tell him something, or who like don't know anything about it but are trying to help him like find information. And it's just a lot of that like same thing happening over and over again, where something slightly weird will happen, he'll try to ask somebody about it, they act weird, he has no additional information. Something weird happens, he asks someone about it, they act weird, he has no additional information. So I think that the first part of this is just a little bit overly repetitive and long, and I've just now gotten an explanation for what's happening, and I feel like I should be closer to the end than I am, but at the same time, I have no idea what direction this could take. Like, I can see where there would be a lot of book left for this particular premise, but I have genuinely no idea what direction this is going to go in at this point. I also was having some trouble early on figuring out what the characters' names were, because you get introduced to a lot of people very quickly. Not quite as much as like Corpse Party. That one had like, here's a bunch of, I think it was like 8 or 9 characters that you learn like all at once, and I was having trouble remembering everybody's names there. I'm slowly getting to grips with all of the characters here. There's not quite as many of them that are significant, but yeah, I really have no expectations for the last half, because we've just kind of gotten the answer to the mystery of the first half, and now it's just kind of a situation where you gotta watch things play out. We know what's going on now to some extent, or at least a partial understanding of what's going on, and now we just have to watch the events play out. So I'm having a decent time so far. I think it's a little overly repetitive, and I would have liked this part to be a little shorter, I think a little bit punchier, but there are some really good horror moments in here. There's some really horrible deaths that happen that I think are interesting, and I'm curious to find out what's gonna happen next, but it's also like, it's not the most exciting thing I've ever read. I'm hoping that we're gonna get a lot more horror in the latter half, because I feel like this part has just been like weird stuff happening with no explanation, and not even like really scary weird stuff, just like, why are characters acting like that? Why are they being so weird about things? So I'm hoping we'll get more horror here, because the horror bits here are good. They're the most interesting part of that first half, I feel like. But this latter half, I'm hoping will be a little bit more intense in terms of its horror elements. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and dive into the latter half, and hopefully we can get this done. It's currently 10:16, so I need to finish this up and then get this video edited. So gonna try my best, keep my fingers crossed I can get all of that done, and I will be back momentarily for you, and hopefully not too long for me, with my final thoughts on another. I'm chuffed. I finished it. I'm so excited. I managed it, and it's not even midnight yet. It is currently 11:26, so I'm going to be transferring this footage over, getting this video edited and up for tomorrow, and I can't believe that I've managed this. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed this. I do think it's a little repetitive in the first half. I think the second half is better, and it gets quite dark at the midpoint. We get some new information, and there's a bit of a twist that comes partway through the second part that I guessed partially what the twist was. I was slightly off in my guess, but I guessed part of it. But I really liked the way that the kind of solution to this mystery that's introduced in the second half is foreshadowed pretty heavily throughout the first half, or not really even pretty heavily. I hadn't totally picked up on it, but there is like little breadcrumbs that you can pick up in the first half that tells you kind of where things are going in the second half, and so it kind of brings all of it full circle, and I thought that that was really clever, and I enjoyed that piece of it. So overall, I had a really good time with this. I'm gonna give it 4 stars, and I don't have a series to continue because this is the complete story, but I'm glad that I picked this one up. It was an interesting read. It definitely has some issues with that repetitive element, and I think ultimately some of what's going on is a little bit overly convoluted, but I like the way that this wraps up. I think that the solutions at the end are pretty clever, and there's some pretty intense moments for some of these characters. Yeah, overall, this was a good time. I would recommend it. So yeah, a little quick summary here. I ended up reading 4 things, and overall I feel like we did have a kind of upwards trajectory, even if I didn't find like a 5-star. So we started with I'm the Grim Reaper, which is currently backwards. So with I'm the Grim Reaper, I think I gave this 3 stars. It was alright. I'm probably not going to continue with it. Then we read PTSD Radio Volume 1. I probably will continue with this one. I gave it 3.5 stars. This was just kind of weird. I think, while I'm thinking about it, I think if you like Junji Ito, you might like this as well. It has a similar kind of flavor of horror to it, but with a less linear timeline. So there's some, I think, similarities in the art style and in the kind of variety of horror that you're getting here. Then we read Corpse Party Volume 1, and this was another one that I thought was interesting. Does some interesting things with horror, with its horror. I did ultimately decide on a 3.5 star for this, just because I felt like some elements of this were a little underbaked, but overall, again, a good time. Probably will continue with this one. And then finally, another, which I'm giving 4 stars. So I feel like this was pretty successful. I like that we had a kind of upwards trajectory. I moved from 3 stars to 4 stars, not like a huge change, but you know, positive overall. And I'm really glad that I did this again. I think I'm gonna hunt around and find some more series to try. And I'm thinking I want to do a follow-up video at some point, reading some of the later volumes to see how I feel about like 2nd and 3rd volumes in series. So like, let me know down in the comments below if you'd be interested in seeing a kind of follow-up to any of these series that I've picked up. But I think I do want to try this again at some point, and I think maybe also branch out and try some other genres of manga, just because mostly what I've read is horror and a little bit of like kind of comedy slice of life. Like I read Way of the House Husband pretty regularly, and I've started Spy Family, although I haven't progressed in that in quite a while. So I think I want to branch out a little bit as well too, but I've been having so much fun reading horror manga, and it's just a fun way for me to branch out my horror reading because I've just been in such a horror mood this year. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video. I almost said this book. That's not correct. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up here so I have a few minutes to edit it. But let me know down in the comments below if you have any good recommendations for horror manga that I should check out. And I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I hope you consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and hope to see you in the next video. Bye.